right. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you today. It's 4:01, so we always start in time. And I really welcome everyone who's participating in this dialogue today. We value your time. My name is Maurice Khadebe. I'm the head and director of Wits Business School. At Wits Business School, we strongly believe in the power of collaboration. That's why we have these dialogues all the time with different players. To this end, we've forged a number of successful partnerships with organizations, associations, business leaders, and key WBS alumni and academics, amongst others, to maximize the impact that we as a business school can have on the world around us, in South Africa, in the continent, and throughout the globe. Our mission here, let me switch off this. Our mission here at WBS is to graduate agile. I want to emphasize agile because the world is changing so fast, but ethical leaders also. This means that we are committed to fighting the scourge of corruption that is destroying our nation. It means developing business leaders who are not only just digitally capable and technologically savvy and very innovative, but also ethical, and people who are fundamentally concerned with the sustainability of this world, understanding the existential threat that humankind face, and are prepared to really apply what they've learned at business school to solve those challenges that we face and think critically about them, especially from my space, having been in an energy business. This entire transformation from high carbon economy and to low carbon economy is a journey that we need to travel with absolute care and caution, so that we don't leave anybody behind. And so we need leaders that will come up and help us in that direction. WBS Dialogues, I'd like to talk about them, bring many stakeholders together to learn from leaders in business, industry, and academia who have made their mark in South Africa as part of our drive towards collaboration and developing leadership excellence. We invite people onto this platform who are widely regarded as principled, ethical, and innovative. And very important, principled, ethical, and innovative. We're very careful who we invite on this platform because we want people who are aligned with our purpose and passion, particularly in this area of leadership development. So it is my pleasure really to introduce our guest, Mr. Simon Susman. He doesn't need an introduction, and it's a pleasure to have known him for many, many years. It's a pleasure to have seen him operating. It's a pleasure engaging him. I've learned a lot personally from him. So he is a former chairman and CEO of Woolworths. Simon held a number of top executive positions at Woolworths before becoming CEO in year 2000, and then became a non-executive chairperson of Woolworths Holdings in 2010. He still retains a close relationship with the company, serving as an honorary president. So I can say, Mr. President. Although he grew up in South Africa, Simon spent many years in London working through their ranks. That's what I always like promote. People come through their ranks, and go through and learn the business, learn all the levers and be operationally involved, not just being parachuted from the top. It's sometimes good to have people like that who knows. There's many stories I can tell you about Simon when he was running through the ranks. He has inspired many people like Nolita and many others at Woolworths who've got glowing testimonies of Simon's passion and commitment to transformation. He really built the unique Woolies foodies. And I can testify right now, actually, my wife was asking me, what do you want to eat? I said, just get me the Woolies sushi. So I've just finished my lunch on Woolies food. So thank you, Simon, for that, because you've really introduced a completely new thinking about quality, about excellence, about service in a sustainable way. I mean, the work you've done at Woolies, the culture that you have done over many, many years. It's a culture we want to introduce here at WBS. And that is why we want you to be here, and we will continue talking to you to assist us, particularly assist me in the journey of transforming the entire WBS to be customer-centric, to be excellent, and also focus on quality. And these are the tributes that we can truly personally give you a round of applause, because you've done it at Woolworths. And it is ingrained into the DNA of Woolworths. Thanks again. This is a show that is really driven by Prof. Mills, and he's a seasoned moderator and our professor in international business studies, and we're very proud of what you're doing, Prof. Mills. You, in terms of all the partnerships and webinars and all the stakeholder engagement that you put WBS on the map. Thank you very much. Let me hand it over back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maurice. My name is Mills Soko, Professor of International Business and Strategy at Wits Business School, and I welcome you all to this WBS Leadership Dialogue. Since we started this dialogue series at the beginning of last year, we've been fortunate to have been able to get to know several high-profile leaders in business and academia and government. It is an honor for me to be able to facilitate these conversations with so many inspiring minds. Thank you, Maurice, for introducing our guest today. Mr. Simon Susman, I too have been looking forward to this conversation. I know Simon also, I've worked with him through Tsiba Business School, and I can attest to his inspiring leadership. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. You will have an opportunity to ask questions of our guest. Please use the chat box to write your questions or comments, and I will relay them to Mr. Susman. In case you miss anything, this event is being live streamed and recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel. Good afternoon, Simon.
Afternoon, Mills. How are you?
How are you today?
We're both in Cape Town, and winter has arrived, so that's nice.
Yes, yes. So, Simon, I would like you, if you may, talk about your how you grew up. What was growing up like for you, and also I see that you started packing shelves during school days at the age of 9. So you've been in this retail business for a very, very long time. When you look back, to those days as a shelf packer, did it ever cross your mind that one day you rise and become the CEO and chairman of Woolworths Holdings? But talk about your life first, how you grew up, if you don't mind.
So Mills, yes, I grew up in a privileged home in Cape Town, and that was a magical childhood. I can't say it was anything other than a magical childhood. But what came with that privilege, it was a sense of duty from both my parents and my grandparents. And there was always the message that privilege brings obligations. And it was a very powerful message in the family. And those obligations were back to community, they were back to society, they were to the businesses or organizations or schools that you were involved with, back to family. So there was always a sense from my father, my mother in particular, you're privileged, but you have obligations. So yes, that's how I grew up. And at the age of 9, indeed, I begged my father, can I go and work in one of the shops? He was also the head of Woolworths at the time, or I think he was the number 2 in Woolworths. And so I was allowed to go into the little store nearby in Wynberg. And they gave me a crowbar, big steel crowbar, to open the packing cases. Now you can imagine a 9-year-old kid, this is so cool. So I had a lot of fun I think I stuck the crowbar into my leg, and I've still got the scar on my leg. So my scars in retail start early. But, I also, there was a sense of social justice all the way through. And indeed, during that period in the 50s and very early 60s, there were often strange people in the house. And I would say, who are they? No, you're not allowed to know. And it turned out, as I grew older, they were often associates of the about to be banned and then banned ANC. There was a lawyer who defended President Mandela, and he was actually hiding in our house because the apartheid police were after him. So this background really did form, I think, the sense that that I've developed over the years, that you can be lucky, you can be privileged, you can take your opportunities, but you also have to sense where you are in society, and you have to do what you can to make it better, the best you can.
Mm-hmm. All right. Simon, Woolworth is well known for having championed this notion that you do business by doing good. And you initiated this good business journey. The concept of purpose-driven, purpose-driven businesses. And this has gained a lot of momentum in recent years, especially in the wake of COVID, where everybody was talking about purpose, the importance of purpose-driven businesses. According to Colin Mayer, who's a professor at Oxford Said Business School, this is about firms recognizing their role to produce profitable solutions to the problems of people and planet, and not to profit from producing problems for people and planet. What is your view on this? This conception of business. What is your view on this? And do you think businesses should put purpose before profit?
I'm going to give you a controversial answer, and that is no. So I'm a passionate believer in purpose. I was brought up with it. I was brought up with what we call the principles of the business back to the 1950s. That came from Marks and Spencer in the 1930s. How do you do good and make money? But first, the responsibility of any business is to survive. And it's a very real issue. Every business must survive. There's no point in doing good and running out of profit or running into debt or whatever it is. So first you must make money. That's how you reinvest in your business. That's how you employ your people. That's how you create extra employment opportunities in your supply chain and your own people. So first you must make money. You can choose then to make money in a way that cycles the wealth back into society, back into the environment, back into the community. Or you can choose to do it in a very self-centered way. And I just learned over the years that doing it in a way that doing good for the world around you, for your society, for your environment, for your community, actually differentiates you from the noise around and the offers that other people are making, and enables you to carry on and become more and more sustainable, financially sustainable. So it's a circle in that sense, Mills. But first, you must survive as a business. And anybody in this audience and any other audience who's ever tried to start a business or worked in a business, you must survive. You must make positive cash flow. And if you can survive, then you can grow and you can start to cycle that benefit back into the community. And I believe that then enables you to grow stronger.
Could you please elaborate on this concept of a good business journey? What was behind that, and do you think you succeeded, to embody that within the Woolworths group?
So I think that the word succeed and a business leader is a strange one. So I don't think you can ever finish. Your job continues forever. So you can do well or not well, but succeed implies that there's a time at which you can stop, look back and say, okay, we did that. I don't think business works that way. I think business continuously needs to be driven harder, driven better, driven clearer, take your challenges on and move forward. So no, I don't think you can look back and say we succeeded. But the history of the good business journey, if I can come to that, does go a long way back. And I referred to Marks and Spencer. So Marks and Spencer was a business that was actually founded by my own great-grandfather in Britain. So I'm third generation retailer in South Africa, and I think fifth generation in Britain. And he came to Britain and couldn't speak. He was a Jewish refugee from Poland. He couldn't speak English in the 1880s. And he met in the first town that he arrived in, a chap. The story is on a bridge. I'm not sure why it has to be on a bridge, but he met a guy on a bridge and he was kind of making sign language. I have an introduction to somebody. Please, can you tell me how to find him? Because he couldn't speak English. And the guy on the bridge said in sign language, well, what are you looking for? He said, I want to sell things. I want to sell things. And the chap said, I'm a wholesaler, come with me. And he took him to his little warehouse and he gave him a tray of goods, my great-grandfather, a tray of goods. And on the tray of goods were buttons and needles and cotton, little haberdashery stuff. And my great-grandfather started to sell these goods. Now, his name was Mr. Marks of Marks and Spencer. And the point that happened quite quickly is all his customers wanted to negotiate with him. And he ended up, couldn't speak very good English. So he put a little sign on his tray to say, please don't ask the price. It's a penny. Everything he was selling was a penny. And that worked a charm. It really worked. So he didn't have to negotiate. A penny, everybody who wanted stuff could more or less afford. But, and here's where the good business journey starts to come in. His job was then, how do I get the maximum value into my tray of goods for a penny that is better value than the other person? Otherwise, they're going to buy the other person's goods. So the constraint of a maximum price created the extra value. And that sense permeated through Marks and Spencer and then latterly into Woolworths in the 50s. About how do we create the most value for our customers within a given set of circumstances? How many stores can we open? What's our maximum prices? And it was followed up in the 1930s by the son of that Mr. Marks, who in the middle of the Depression walked into one of his stores and one of his staff was asleep at the till. And he got really angry with her and said, how dare you? Everybody's desperate for a job and you're asleep at the till. And she stood up. The legend is that she was all of 5'2". And she said to him, Sir Simon, how dare you? Everybody around you is starving. I work 3 shifts. My mother is starving. My children are starving. I don't get any sleep and you're shouting at me. And he kind of buckled and thought, this is terrible. This is terrible. We can afford to give everybody meals. We can afford to look after our people. And he set up a process, which is today somewhat outdated, but of giving his staff a hot meal, of giving his staff treatment for their feet because they were on their feet all day, and so on and so forth. So when we talk today in the 2020s about the Woolworths Good Business Journey, the seeds of that journey go back 140 years in ways of doing business ethically. And we took those learnings from Marks and Spencer in the 1950s, 60s, 70s. I was in Marks and Spencer learning there. So there's a very long history, Mills. And it's not correct to say Simon created this. Simon, hopefully I added to it. But I didn't create this. This is deep in the DNA of this organization. And I think that's what makes it even more powerful, that people join Woolies or shop at Woolies or come and work for Woolies or supply Woolies with an expectation that they will be asked to see business in a purposeful way.
Right. Simon, you hold the title of Honorary President of the group. And this is was created to ensure that you stay in touch with the company. and that Woolies management has access to decades of retail experience. How does this work in practice? Do you have to attend board meetings? Do you attend exco meetings? And how do your colleagues see you? Because I would be very worried about having somebody who's been there for a long time. I'll feel intimidated, right? So how does it work for you, to be there in the company of your colleagues, and how do they relate to you?
So mostly they ignore me. So that's the best part about it. They ignore me, and Mills, I loved my career at Woolworths. It was challenging. It was stimulating. It was 18, 20-hour days. It was just, I was so lucky. And I've run my race. And it's a long time that others take up the cudgel and run the race. It's their race to run. From time to time, I'm in that office at the moment, and they'll pop in and say, Simon, can I have a coffee? And just, can I bounce something off you? And that's lovely, but it's not for me to go in and say, I saw that the till wasn't open, or I think that the bananas aren't good enough, or whatever it is. I've done that. They must do that, and they must do it as they are, beautifully. So it's a great privilege to be called the Honorary President. I have this very nice office, and mostly I get ignored and can carry on doing all the exciting things that I am doing.
All right. I've got a question from Tsepo Mongalo. Tsepo, having been at Woolworths for a while, I would like to find out from you, Simon, whether the strategy of Woolworths has always been to expand only in the suburbs and not to infiltrate the township and rural markets. If so, do you know if now the strategy of the business has changed in that regard?
Okay, so Tsepo, I'm no longer involved in the strategy, but I will take you back to my comment earlier, that the purpose of a business is to survive. And we have a few stores in townships. We don't have a lot of stores. We have a few stores in townships, and they are very profitable. They're highly profitable. But the bulk of the market that Woolworths serves is in the suburbs. So yes, that certainly was the strategy over now nearly 90 years. It's spread to the townships, and in particularly as the living standards of certain areas of the townships have started to improve. So those customers move up the social scale, the financial scale. There's more of a market for us, but the bulk of the business is in the suburbs, and the suburbs, as we all are delighted to see, are blackening up. There's been this radical shift, and there is a set of statistics that I've used in presentations over the years that shows over the last 20 years the dramatic reduction in absolute poverty in South Africa. And I don't know why those charts aren't publicized, but it's something like 30% of the level that it was, absolute poverty. Of course, some of that is social grants, but a lot of it is not social grants. So this is a country still moving up the economic and social ladder, despite all the challenges we face. And by golly, do we face some challenges.
Simon, what would you attribute the profitable longevity of Woolworths to? I mean, I've lived enough to see OK Bazaars and Starter Fords, and they came and went, but there you are, you've remained, in a leading position in the retail market. What would you ascribe that to, and what distinguishes you from your competitors?
So I think, can I answer the second one first? Well, I think what in the end does distinguish us is the good business journey. I think that deeply committed sense of values, of principles, and of interpreting every relationship under the umbrella of the values. One of the business leaders came in to me the other day, and he said, "Oh, Simon, I need to tell you, I've just visited a factory, and these guys are going to commit hundreds of millions of rands of investment to supply Woolworths into the future, hundreds of millions of rands of investment to supply into the future. So I said to him, who are they committing to? He said, to Woolworths. And then he said to me, I know what you're going to tell me. They are committing to me. I said, yes, they are committing to you. So you are the head of that division, and they have to absolutely trust that you're going to carry on purchasing for many years from them. Otherwise, why would they make that investment? So these kind of relationships, we have suppliers who've supplied us in apparel, who've supplied us in food for 70, 80 years. And the grandchildren of those founders are supplying us. So these relationships are built and the investments are made on the basis of trust. So I start with the good business journey. Why has Woolies survived? There are others that have survived. Pick n Pay, Checkers, Truworths has been going for many, many, many years. And in general, they've survived because they're able to rejuvenate themselves. So the founders have passed on, they've brought in fresh blood, put in their second or third generations, brought in outside thinking, brought in independent boards, pursued diversity in all forms to bring different thinking into the business. If you don't do that, then any business will grow old with its customers. And it's a really dangerous thing to do that, to grow old with your customers. And I suppose some of those that disappeared, OK Bazaars in that form, grew old with its customers, We've been able to, as have our competitors, keep refreshing ourselves, keep taking on new challenges, digital, overseas competitors. How do we fight back? How do we think differently? So yes, you've got to reinvent yourself all the time.
Right. I think I've seen another question here from an anonymous attendee. What made and still makes Woolies a family store? What's in their DNA and strategy that has shaped this? That's a question you might want to respond to later, Simon. But now I want to take to, you've had enormous successes as a company, but they've also been setbacks. And one of these was, the acquisition of the Australian department, chain store, David Jones, which was I would say it was not a success, right? What happened there? What happened there? What is the problem?
So the problem was we misjudged how complex and difficult it would be. So that's the problem. Yeah. There's some very difficult insights that you have to face when something like that becomes as problematic as it did. So first is, would you do it again? And the answer is, if the answer is a total no, I'll never do that again, then you are shutting the door on changing your business, on rejuvenating your business. Did we get it wrong? Yes, we did. Have the management team that succeeded me rectified most of the issues in that business? Yes, totally. And when I look back and look at the current leadership team and think what they've managed to do to wipe out the debt and to change a lot of the rental structures that were holding that business back, it's been remarkable. The biggest single lesson that I learned out of it is, if you're going to do acquisitions, expand, take on new projects, do them in bite-sized chunks. And that was a too big a bite for us. It was too big a bite. And if we could have bought something half the size and challenged ourselves and got that wrong, well, then we would have learned lessons with less pain. So maybe the bite was too big. But no businessman should say, I failed at that, therefore I'm never going to do something like that again. That's wrong, and your business will die. So have the courage of your convictions, but the scars on my back say that was too big a bite. That was the primary thing.
Now, I would like to talk to you about corporate governance and how it has changed, in the wake of COVID-19. company boards now will likely face increased pressure to incorporate stakeholder perspectives and voices, especially those of employees, into their oversight and decision-making processes. And they'll also be challenged to show that the company is performing well for all its stakeholders. In your view, how has COVID-19 changed corporate governance? And what should companies do to ensure that they integrate these changes into their decision-making processes?
So it's really interesting this time of hopefully post-COVID. We don't know, but there's less COVID, let's put it that way. I think corporate governance is always about doing the right thing, Mills. It's not about rules and regulations. You've seen in our country, and Maurice talked about some of the awful corruption we have. There's plenty of rules and regulations that say you mustn't steal, you mustn't lie, you mustn't cover up. They're helpful and they're correct, and you should have them. But in the end, if you don't have a shared commitment to do the right thing, then corruption or other defaults are going to happen. So for me, corporate governance is do the right thing first. Then when you've done that, you can assess, how do I make a diverse board of directors? How do I make sure they're independent of the management? How do I make sure they look at details like in the audit report, the transformation of the organization, the ethics of the organization, and you can have committees to do that. But in the end, all of those come back to the thing is, how do I do the right thing for my company, for my stakeholders, and for the society around me? And if that drives your thinking, then you're going to get corporate governance right. And I don't think that's COVID related. I just think that's how business should be. And integral in that is a separation of powers between the board of directors and the management. And we've seen now with Ukraine, here is a dictator who doesn't have a board of directors. He's just the boss, and that's what he is, and he can do what he wants. And everybody else says, yes, we're happy to invade Ukraine or whatever awful thing he wants. So the concept of separation of powers and the concept of seeking to do the right thing, I think is the best governance you can have.
Someone, the world is, we are talking about Russia right now. There's so many changes that are happening, political, technological, environmental, demographic changes, that are happening in the world. And the world is being transformed in a very significant way. How do you think these changes will impact the retail industry? Where do you see the retail industry say the next 10, 20, 30 years, or even 50 years?
Mills, first and foremost, what will never change in retail is you have customers, and you are there to anticipate your customers' needs. So it's interesting. It's not necessarily that the customer is 100% right. Of course, the customer is 100% right. But if you're not ahead, and I always refer to our customers as her, if you're not ahead of her thinking, then you're going to look like outdated and as if you're not up there. You need to be ahead of her thinking. So if I go back to when we first launched lasagna, nobody was doing a prepared lasagna in South Africa at the time. And you could go into a shop and you could buy a packet of pasta, you could buy a packet of mince, some tomatoes, nice cream, and all your herbs and spices, and make a delicious lasagna at, I have no idea, let's say 10 rands. And Woolworth comes and launches a packet of lasagna at 50 rand, ready-made. Well, all logic would say that's stupid. Nobody's going to pay 50 rand for something that they could do for 10 rand. This, I'm sure I've got my prices wrong, but this is 25 years ago. The point is that the time saved and the skill in that pasta was unbelievable in the customer's eyes. She said, well, I can save hours doing this. And it's really nice. It's just as good as my mother used to make or whatever. So we were able to anticipate our customers' needs. And if you look at all those businesses, you challenged me, how does a business survive? It's constantly anticipating future needs of customers. And that will never, ever change. So we are seeing now a major shift into shopping online, and it's stronger in some categories than others. It's stronger in some regions than others. It's stronger in some parts of the world than others. And I think that's a mega trend, and we need to all be anticipating it. But even within that, and I work for a business in Dubai, which has just in the last 5 years created an enormous online shopping business of luxury goods. What sells is the most fashionable item that Gucci or whoever it is putting on. That's what sells. Last year's product doesn't sell as well. So forever, for the next 50 years, we are going to have to anticipate our customers' future needs. And she has so much choice available to her. We're going to have to be the ones who stand out, whether in our style, our taste, our ethics, our purpose, as you talked about. But we're never going to be allowed to stop anticipating our customers' needs.
Simon, could you please talk about climate change? The Woolworths is very well known for having this mindset, about embracing environmentally friendly practices. There's been a lot of pressure on companies to take the climate crisis seriously and to make it a focus of everyday life. What is Woolworths' approach to climate change, from your experience, and what has the company done practically in terms of specific projects and initiatives to combat the climate crisis?
So Woolworths has had this at the heart of its good business journey for years and years and years. And we knew the science, we knew this was coming, and we knew we had to be part of the team, the global team, that was making a difference to this. So again, I come back. First, you have to survive. Your business, you have to survive. Secondly, you have to do what is right for your community and your environment. And global climate change is going to be a horror story for, in the most part, the poorer communities around the world. And that applies to South Africa as well. So we're going to see less rainfall. We're going to see higher temperatures. We're going to see some areas flooded. It's a real issue. So what we decided years ago, when we really started to encapsulate the good business journey, was to set targets for all sorts of things. So we set targets for water reduction. We set targets for electricity reduction. And actually, per store or per meter of space in the stores, we've reduced electricity over the last 8 or 10 years, electricity usage by over 45%. So it's a massive amount of reduction of carbon going into the environment. We've changed, I think, something like 97% of the farming practices that supply our fruit and vegetables to be much more climate focused, to put compost back into the land so that we don't put as much fertilizer on the land, to use less water, that the land can hold more water. And you can take bit by bit by bit across the business. We pioneered LED lighting. We put those doors on the fridges, which originally I was very skeptical about. For the customer's not going to want to open the door, hold a bag. They love it. They see it as keeping the goods fresher, and they know that it reduces our CO2 usage and our energy usage. And I think the big lesson that we've learned over the years is that most of these end up costing you less over time rather than more. So when you start, they all, like if I listen to this international debate, oh, wind power comes and goes, it's so expensive. To install wind power in an appropriate area, and we have many appropriate areas in South Africa, is way cheaper than installing fresh coal generation. Forget the corruption, just the base cost of installing fresh coal generation, and solar power the same. So the argument always starts out, it's too expensive, and it's beginning to emerge worldwide that it's too expensive not to do it.
All right. There's a question here from Rodney Lentit. Will Woolworths consider introducing budget convenience stores in townships under a different brand to attract customers who want the same quality but more affordable for those that can want afford. Okay, that's a sort of bridging the gap strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've tested that concept, and the honest answer is we are not as good at that as some of our competitors are. So you look at businesses like Boxer, Cambridge over the years, they understand that market a lot better than we do. There is something else that I learned years and years ago. I was visiting one of our stores in the middle of Johannesburg, in Kirk Street, downtown Johannesburg, and I walked through the street traders, and I was looking for what are the product ideas that are going to work here? What are the product ideas? I come from the northern suburbs. Now what's working in the city? And one of the big products were those big bags of they call them Mapani worms, but they weren't Mapani worms. They were like a chip, a kind of corn snack in a big bag. So I went back to Kate and said, guys, I've got it. I know how we can penetrate the Joburg city center market. We're going to put big bags of corn snacks in the stores. So we developed this product and everybody's very excited. And I go back to the store and store manager comes up to me and I say to her, African lady, how's it going? How are those big Mapani worm packs going? And she says to me, Simon, get them out of my store. I said, why? She says, it's an insult. My people come to Woolworths because they aspire to what Woolworths brings to the nation. And you're insulting me. Please get them out of the store. So what a lesson was that? What a lesson was that?
Simon, is that why, you experimented with a franchise model in several African countries, which ultimately, I think you rescinded it. What was, those are the considerations that we took into account in ending this franchise model?
Yeah,
any risk, inherent risk involved with, having your business operated under a different, in a franchise model fashion.
Yeah. So one of my previous bosses was a very sharp man, very bright man, and he would say to us, good businesses resolve paradoxes. So he says, Woolworths resolves the paradox between high quality and lower price. He says, that's a paradox. So if you can resolve that paradox, then you're successful, because the paradoxes are difficult. Anybody can sell high quality at high price, and anybody can sell low quality at low price. So how do you get your quality high and your price low? The franchise discussion was very similar to that. So the franchise discussion was, we wanted to get into Africa. We knew nothing about those countries. And we brought on local businessmen to help us do it. And in the beginning, it was extremely successful. What then happened was that, being local businessmen and local entrepreneurs, they increasingly wanted to do things their way and not the Woolies way. Now, when I look back, they may have been right and we may have been wrong. We'll never know. But we wanted to do things our way. This is our brand, and this is how we want to establish our brand on the fresh market. So that's why we bought those businesses back. We couldn't solve that paradox of how do you get an entrepreneur and a strong brand to work well together. We work well with our entrepreneurs in our supply chain. That's brilliant, but they are not our brand. They are their brands, and they supply us with beautiful merchandise. But when we were trying to sell ourselves to the communities, the entrepreneur would want to do this and get all excited, and we would say, no, this is the Woolies way of doing it. So that didn't really work.
All right. I've got a question from Lifuo Makele. And Lifuo says, talking of thinking ahead, in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, will there be stuff such as contactless payment options in stores to minimize cross-infections between humans? Stuff like adopting Amazon Go methods in the wholesale food stores.
So therein lies another paradox. So some of those reduce employment numbers, and the best way to go forward for any business is to reduce employment numbers. How do you survive as a business? You reduce employment numbers. Is that good for the country? Not in and of itself. It's terrible for the country, but it creates the profit that creates the investment that create the new jobs. So I have no doubt, I'm not in the detail anymore with Woolies, that they will be looking at contactless payment. Whether they'll go as far as Amazon Go, where you literally walk around the store, you fill your trolley and you walk out, and it knows what you've bought and deducts off your credit system automatically. I'm not sure they're going to go as far as that. But will we have contactless payment? Yes, in a sense, we already do. You can tap your card. You'll be able to tap your phone. In fact, I think people are starting to pay with Apple Pay on the phones. So you have to progress, you have to move forward, and you have to find these labor-saving devices in order to create the future jobs, So there's another paradox for you, Mills.
Very interesting. Simon, Woolworth is considered to be one of the most transformed companies in South Africa, and we've done extremely well in terms of building a diverse organization. You have witnessed the changes that have happened since 1994 in South Africa. You had the cold face yourself. How would you characterize the state of economic transformation in South Africa today? Have we made enough progress in terms of changing the structure of the economy?
We haven't made enough progress. Categorically, we haven't made enough progress, Mills. But as I say, we have made more progress than we give ourselves credit for as a nation. I'm not talking about Woolies. We've made more progress. You go to restaurants today, who's in the restaurant? Now, who's in the restaurant is a reflection of who's rising up the ladder. And the restaurants are looking darker. The car vendors are selling more cars, the houses that are selling. So the nation has moved forward. It's like my concept earlier on in this discussion about success. You can't ever succeed here. You have to keep on the journey and keep this transformation agenda going. To me, though, there are two fundamentally different arenas in which transformation must take place. So the one is in what we traditionally think of as transformation, which is how do we get more Black leaders, more Black business leaders, more Black thought leaders into senior positions. And that we have to just keep on pushing. And yes, there are things like BEE that help stimulate. Everybody moans about them, but they've made us think differently and they've changed things. And once you change one generation, you change the generations beneath it. So you really got to keep pushing that. And the first generation may need doors open. The second generation needs less doors. The third generation owns the doors. It's just a magical process. But the dark side of all of this is the unemployment, Mills. And that I think we should be ashamed of ourselves, and I think we should be ashamed of our policies. And I am not a believer in the labor policies that this country espouses. And I see things like minimum wages, closed shop unions, nothing against unions at all, in fact, the opposite, as raising barriers to employment. And I look at 43 or 44% of our people don't have jobs. And in women, it's much higher. And we're not listening to them. We're saying to them, you're not allowed a job unless somebody can pay you 3,500 Rand a month, when they would happily work for a fraction of that in organized business. So I think we have a lot to answer for putting in kind of developed market philosophies into an undeveloped market, when the best qualification for the next job is the first job. The best qualification for the next job is the first job. And once you're in the job ladder, you can work yourself up, and you can give your children the privilege of saying, yes, my parents worked. But right now we have millions of children whose parents don't work. How are those parents able to say to their children, this is how you do it? So there are two worlds. There's the world of those of us in work. We must carry on transforming. And there's the world of those of us who are not in work, and they are silent. And who's hearing them? And what do we need to do for them? And we need to create an economy that prices their efforts appropriately. And that's one of the great things we're not allowed to say in South Africa, that a person who's finished school, standard 6 or 7 or 8, and doesn't have a qualification, but wants to work, they can't in the beginning earn high wages. They can work themselves up to high wages, but they can't in the beginning. And once we start them on the ladder, they're spending money in the community, they're going to work harder. You just start the cycle. And now look at what China did 20 and 30 years ago. That's how they created the full employment they have today. So we need to hear the unemployed. We need to think about how do we get them priced correctly to be employed. And it's politically, I know it's a hot potato, but it's the truth. And carrying on doing what we've done harder, which is what we seem to be doing all the time, has just taken the unemployment up from 20 to 30 to 40 to over 40%. So I do get quite hot under the collar for the unemployed.
All right. There's a question from Helen Dar, and the question is, an emerging branding strategy is storytelling about a brand. For example, the attention and the image of Barack Obama improved greatly when Oprah gave him the platform to tell his life story. A couple of my postgrad students are studying and telling the Woolworth story. Can there be a way for Woolworths to partner with our students to tell its story?
So that's a question was asked to the Woolies team, not the retired old guy who sits in the corner. But yes, I totally agree that storytelling is a very powerful motivator of people. I totally agree. I had a chairman years ago who used to tell us, you guys don't tell enough stories about your business. I'll tell you a wonderful little story. I went into after I retired, and I kind of, as you retire, nobody remembers you. So your brand diminishes. And I was shopping in one of our rural stores, and I'd finished the shopping. I do all the shopping. I've done the shopping for 40 years. I think a retailer must do the shopping. So I get to the checkout, and the lady behind the checkout says to me, "Good afternoon, sir. Would you like a plastic bag?" This is 15, 20 years ago. So I said, "Yes, thank you, please." She says, "Would you really like a plastic bag?" So I said, "Yes." She said, "Are you sure you'd like a plastic bag?" So now I'm starting to get irritated. It's not the third time she's asked me this. I said, "Well, yes, why are you asking me that?" She says, "You of all people should not be using a plastic bag." Now, how's that for the checkout lady in a rural store who understood the mission and the purpose of the business better than the retired chairman? Wasn't it magical?
That's magical. And what did you do? What happened?
I was so embarrassed. I gave her a huge hug. I called the manager over. I said, "This lady understands the business better than you or I do. Please," there was some reward system at the time. "Please give her a reward."
Wonderful, wonderful. Simon, you have an established reputation as a mentor. You know, last year we had Nolita Fagute as our guest. You know, she was sitting in that hot chair there, and she spoke glowingly about you, about the role that you played in nurturing her, and there are many other business executives, who have attested to the role that you have played in supporting and developing them. How important, in your view, is mentorship and in developing leadership? And what is your preferred mentoring approach? How do you have many people, that you're mentoring? How do you go about doing that? Why is it also important?
No, I think, Mills, it's hugely, hugely important. I was privileged when I lived in England and I worked for Marks and Spencer myself. I worked my way up the ladder. I think Maurice was talking about that from the shop floor in Marks and Spencer up the ladder. And I ended up in my final year working as the assistant to the chairman of the company. And what a giant of a person he was. And his philosophies and his understanding of the relationship between a supply chain, the supplier base, the brand, the people on the shop floor and the brand. I just had this privilege of being exposed to him for about 18 months. It was a remarkable experience. So I've always seen it as part of the duty of leaders to mentor people, because it's not that, I'm now referring to myself a bit as an elder, it's not that we can tell you, okay, fine, you must put this on top of that and put that next to this. It's more about how to think and how we've reacted over the years to the scars and the failures that we've had. You asked about buying a business that we shouldn't have bought because it was too big. And the lesson that I learned, as I said to you, is it's too big. It's not that you don't buy businesses that you believe in, but be careful that you don't go too far. So that's a lesson you can pass on. But mostly it's about how do you mature the thinking and start to see not that everything is black and white. And most business decisions are shades of gray. Most business decisions are shades of gray. And to get used to that and coming to a conclusion within the shades of gray and not seeking that absolute. Sometimes you're lucky and you can see black and white, we should do this, we shouldn't do that. But then the young executives or leaders don't need advice on that. They need advice when they're in the grayness. And the more you can help them stay in the grayness and learn to lead from positions of uncertainty, I think the more you can help young leaders to develop. And the good ones, to be honest, just need nudging. And I look at Nolita Fakude, she's one of the good ones. She's chairman of Anglo. I mean, how remarkable is that? She just needed nudging. She was hungry to learn and was very, very comfortable increasingly in operating in that grayness. But by golly, did she build her own career? And I know she says that I mentored her, but I didn't really. She mentored her. Maybe I've nudged her from time to time.
And you've reached the pinnacle of success as a business leader, and you've learned many lessons. Could you please share with us, Simon, the lessons that we've learned over the years, in your retail career?
So I think that I talk about this grayness, that not everything is black and white. So what you have to do as a leader is seek the truth. I have a dilemma in one of the businesses that I'm involved with. It's an overseas business. And there are two generations of the family. And they are struggling to get on with each other, the founder and the next generation. And my role as one of the non-executives is to seek the truth. And the founder says the young people are irresponsible and take advantage and this, that, and the other. And the younger generation says the older generation's holding us back and not letting us go forward. So that's a classic of any business, whether there happens to be a family business, but it's a classic of any business. So I think the lesson that I've learned, and it's extraordinarily difficult, and I get it wrong regularly, is seek the truth. Seek the truth. Ask, find out. Like that lady on the till, on the plastic bag, the message to me was, okay, fine, the message is out in stores, don't use plastic. What a powerful message. I didn't have to ask that. But how many thousands of questions over the years have I been asking in seeking the truth? And it's very difficult, as I say, because the world is not black and white, to find the truth all the time. Doesn't stop you from continuing to seek the truth of the business decision you're after.
And what other lessons? You must have a lot of lessons to share with us, Simon.
I think that you learn lessons of technique, Mills.
Yeah.
And one of those lessons is to keep asking questions. This is just to keep asking questions. And it does a few things. It sets an example for the teams to say, okay, the old man's going to keep on asking, we'd better know the answer. So if they know the answer, it means they have prepared whatever they're doing properly. And they know the depth of it. They know sometimes the science of it. Why should we be doing this? Why does that fabric shrink? If you know the science of why the fabric shrinks, then you can put in place technologies that stop it shrinking or fading its color. So ask, ask, ask. It creates a thoroughness in the business, particularly around a brand like this, which seeks excellence. But as a leader, you can't ask all the questions that need to be asked. There are 10 zillion questions. So you have to pick your time when you deep dive into something. And sometimes you stumble upon it and you get a bad feeling and you say, okay, I better deep dive and ask 1,000 questions. Other times, others will say to you, Simon, there's a problem here. We need to probe it and dig into it. And other times it's just a good thing to do and see where it takes you, see where it takes you. And what I found over the years is that the closer people are to the customer or to the factory or to the farm, the more truth you're going to get. And the problem with all of our headquarters or head offices or service centers, whatever we call them, is they are not touching the customer or the supply chain or the land or the knitting mill. But the people in those factories absolutely are. So go and ask the questions where it's important, and it's less important in your headquarters. It's really interesting. And I think together with that, most people who work for corporates are committed and passionate and want to do things. And when the boss is asking a question, in general, the boss, whoever she or he may be, is leading to a change. So the instinctive reaction of most managers is to answer the boss what they think will shut the boss up. So sometimes it's what the boss wants to hear. Sometimes it's something else. But when they say, yes, we're doing that on Tuesday, what they really mean is, please shut up, I'm busy. So you have to cut through that as a leader. And I say to young people, the answer to most questions is, please shut up, I'm busy. Please go away, I'm busy. And it's not that I'm busy doing things that I think are bad. I'm busy doing things I think are good. And the job of the leader is probably to change what I'm doing. And I know that. So please shut up and go away. I'm busy.
Yeah. Which leads me to your leadership, your leadership philosophy, your leadership style, leadership approach. How would you describe yourself as a leader? What kind of a leader are you, Simon?
I'm a leader who makes a lot of mistakes, Mills. I don't know. I think you need to ask that of the people who worked with me, but I think that in general they would say I seek a fairness, I seek a truth. And that's my mission, is to seek a truth. And sometimes it's extraordinarily hard because people come in the way of the truth. Relationships become in the way of the truth. Power struggles come in the way of the truth. Facts come in the way of the truth. So I think if they said on my retirement, dear Simon, you gave us guidance on the principles, you gave us guidance on getting it right, and you gave us guidance on the truth, seeking the truth, that would be good for me. I remember once one of the executives came to me and they were developing a product in Norway. And he came to me and he said, Simon, I think we've got it right. And I tasted it and it wasn't right. And I said to him, no, go back to Norway. He said, Simon, you have sent me to Norway 6 times already. I said, I know, but you haven't got it right. Go back to Norway, get it right. So, and 7 times, and we got it right. It was delicious after that.
Yeah. There's a question there. I know you have an abiding interest in education. Simon, having worked with you through TIBA, and you also now at the chair of the advisory board at the University of Stellenbosch Business School. And this is a question asked by Thabo. What do you consider to be important when it comes to education? Why are you so passionate about education? You left UCT. You left UCT. You didn't finish at UCT. You're involved in politics, right? but you have this. I've noticed with you have a strong abiding interest in education. How do you think? Why is it important, and how do you think education can contribute towards economic development in South Africa?
I think education is just absolutely mission critical. So the state of our country's education system is another one that just drives me mad. If all we said to our teaching community was for every child that passes every grade, you get R100 bonus, we would change the delivery of our teaching. Our teachers would be incentivized to do it. We don't incentivize people. So I think teaching is mission critical. What does it do? It teaches you two things. Teaches you the mechanics, like how to read, how to add up, how to write. And you can't succeed in the modern world, certainly outside of manual labor, without knowing how to read and write well. Not just read and write well. But secondly, all of that learning at school trains your mind to be agile and to absorb new learnings and fresh learnings and new ideas and new concepts. So there's the teaching of the stuff and there's the teaching of the mind. And certainly leaders, their biggest asset is actually the mind. Is the mind agile enough? Is the mind able to absorb what changes are required? So yes, I have a passion for education, and I'm involved in NGOs from early childhood development in the townships here in Cape Town. As you say, through Tsiba, and then through to Stellenbosch University. So in a way, I cover quite the full vertical of education. And each level faces different challenges. And yes, we can't grow our nation without educating our people, both in the issues, the reading and the writing and the arithmetic, there are 3 R's, and in creating a mind that is flexible and able to live in the modern world. Your questioner who asked about contactless pay, whatever's been done in contactless pay today is going to be outdated in 3 years' time, and that's going to come from people with agile minds.
And Simon, still on the theme of education, you now associated with Tsiba and Stellenbosch, which are business schools. Do you think as business schools we're doing enough to contribute towards development? What would you like us to do as a business executive and a business leader who's seen it all? What is it that you think we can do to contribute towards development? The quality of graduates, the skills that are required, to navigate the current environment, the crises and all that. What kinds of leadership skills do we need to navigate this crisis moment? You have your COVID, you have all these things happening.
So the truth is there will always be a crisis of some kind. There'll be giant crises and there'll be micro crises. Come into a meeting and you can't get your laptop to work. That's a micro crisis. COVID is a macro crisis. So I think business schools have a very real role in generating business leaders who can live with uncertainty. And I think Maurice used the word agile. You have to be able in the modern business environment operate in uncertainty. It reflects my point about everything's gray. There's no black, there are very few black and white decisions. But it's gray. What do you do about COVID? Do you allow people into your stores? Must they wear masks? Can you shake hands? Do you have a sanitizer? Hopefully in 3 months' time, we won't ask those questions, but we might. And then will definitely be other questions. If your business is all analog, why aren't you digitizing it? If your business is digitized, why aren't you making use of analog? there's Amazon Go. So Amazon starts the world of digital shopping and starts to open stores, but they're not the same stores that Woolworth would open. They're different stores. So business schools must create leaders who can operate in uncertainty, who are deeply personally values-based, they seek their own truths, and who are flexible and agile to cope with a world that is only ever going to change faster. And if you think of the ages-old refrain, from the old to the young and the young to the old. So the old always say that the young have it easy, and the young always say that the old could not cope in the modern world today. So there's another one of those wonderful paradoxes. But the truth is the young world today is just speeding up. It's absolutely speeding up. And business schools can help create leaders who can live in that sped up world and happily live in it. Because we have not explored the ends of the human mind, not by any long stretch.
What are your highlights of your career, Simon? What would you say the highlights of your career?
I've loved working for Woolies. It's been a privilege. And it is interesting. My father worked for Woolworths, and I kind of always wanted to do it. You asked me that right at the beginning. I always wanted to do it. I remember when I was about 16, we were driving in the car, and he said, "I need to have a very serious conversation with you." And I said, "What is that about?" He said, "Well, you need to choose what career you want." I said, "But I want to go into shops." So from a young age, I wanted to do this, and I've been very lucky. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And thoroughly enjoyed does not mean that it's without pain. Like most people, I was demoted a number of times. I upset my bosses. I upset my subordinates. I got things wrong, and that's painful and humiliating. And you have to learn to live with the humiliation. But when I look back, I was just lucky I was in a business that suited my skill set, and I was able to take it on, leave it better, and then move on, pass that baton on. So yes, I love that. I do also think that the establishment of the good business journey as a concept, so I said it was deep in the DNA of business, but to be able to, with the team, because the team here did a remarkable job of categorizing what we needed to do in the good business journey, and then measured it. As I said, we measured electricity, we measured transformation, we measured anything. We measured our community work that we do. So the good business journey was very all-encompassing, and as much as it took the old historical DNA of the organization, I think it added to society around us. And I do feel proud of that, and of the people who still today passionately drive it. Now they're taking plastic bags out of the Woolies stores. They'll be working on whatever's next and new, and it's wonderful to see that.
Do you miss it, Simon? Surely you must. You're in the thick of action, for 37 years, and it must be really. You surely must be missing it. Being in, you say you did say you have run your race, and that is understandable. But you must miss it.
Mills, I'm very lucky. I'm very busy, so I sit on a number of NGOs. As you say, education, charitable NGOs, old age NGOs, conservation. I'm involved deeply in conservation, and I think that's really, really important. And the conservation that I'm involved with ranges from, interestingly enough, changing grazing practices in some of the very large rangelands that we still have in South Africa, almost back to historical practices where the cattle are rotated from field to field to field. And in that way, we're finding we're getting rid of alien vegetation, we're getting water tables to come back, we're getting the grass to improve, we're getting the communities to actually drive an income out of selling their cattle, as opposed to just having the cattle as a nominal store of wealth. You can do good and bring it all together. So I'm involved with, that's just one of the NGOs, involved with another number of NGOs, and then I'm involved with a number of businesses, both overseas and in South Africa. So I'm just very lucky that people still want to listen to me, I suppose. And I'm not sure that they do always, but I'm busy, and I did, as a busy executive, I was always fearful of not having enough to do. So now I have more than enough to do, and I'm very happy to do it. And I will quote the quote that Maurice remembers. I have a good friend who retired as the chief executive of a retail business in India about 5 years ago. And I said to him, Nagesh, what are you going to do now you retire? And he said, Simon, I spent the first third of my life learning and the second third of my life earning. So learning for the first third, earning for the second third. And now I'm entering my third third, and I'm going to do a lot of returning. And so learning, earning, returning. And he started a charity which trains and supports retail workers in India. And he's got something like 2 million workers who are part of this charity, and he helps with their education. He helps with their medical. It's a magical thing that he's done. Absolutely magical thing that he's done. So I'm in the returning stage mostly, but I still have a lot of business interests, and I love that. I enjoy that. So I miss it, but I don't miss it. And I really believe you run your race and you move on.
Learning, earning, returning. Very powerful. Any regrets, Simon? Any regrets?
Thousands of regrets.
Okay, tell us a few. Don't.
The regrets are always you don't spend enough time with your family. That's always very difficult. And people say to me, is there work-life balance in driving a career? And the honest truth is there isn't really. If you're ambitious and driven and you want to achieve, it's extraordinarily difficult to spend the time that you might want with your family. And it's doubly why it's one of the toughest things that women have to deal with in building a career. How do they manage not being with their children as much as they want to? Men, we give ourselves the excuse that it's okay for us and it's not okay for our wives. But it's not true. We all struggle with that. So I should have spent more time with my children, but what I've tried to discipline myself is when you're with your children, you focus on your children. And it's that focus which brings the reward and helps to teach them. So those kind of regrets, I can regret all the wrong decisions I made. I think I can regret the most when I jumped to a decision without finding the truth. And that would always come back, and I would feel terrible about that always. So you make a wrong judgment about a person or a corporate decision, and you know you didn't ask enough questions. You know you didn't know, or you asked the questions only of that side of the argument, not this side of the argument. But there's no businessman who doesn't have regrets. And I want to say something else to a lot of young business people, which they don't believe. And that is about fear. And fear is very important. And I sat on the board of a very, very tough entrepreneur. I won't say the company, but the founder was a real, if I can use the word, hard-ass business person. And when I joined his board, it was a listed company, and indeed, with 3 other directors, in the end, we asked him to step down. So I was part of firing this giant businessman because it was time for him to go. He had run his race and he hadn't seen it. But in his book, he wrote a book about his life and his successes, and he was proud of his successes, is a paragraph which struck me as enormously important for myself and for young business people. And he says in the book, when others look at successful business people, they see only the trappings of success. They see the wealth, they see the accolades, the awards, and I'm almost quoting verbatim here.
Mm.
They see the meetings with the president, etc., etc. They do not see, others do not see, the mind-numbing fear, the sleepless nights, the fractured relationships, the agonizing doubts. And that, and so the paragraph went on. And that paragraph was very important to me because I was always doubting myself, say, why is that competitor growing faster than me? Why is this happening? Why is that happening? So you doubt yourself. Am I right in my thinking and my strategy? Am I going to cost people their jobs? What is this?
Mm.
So owning as a young business person that you will have doubts, that you will have fears, that you will have difficulty in holding relationships. And it's a wonderful, the people that I admire the most are those who've kept their families and their lives together all the way through tough careers. It's really challenging to do that. But if you enter business and you want to build yourself in an ambitious career, please own your fears and own your doubts. They will happen. And if you're not fearful and not doubtful, I suspect you're not seeking the truth enough and not asking enough of those right questions. So own the fear. It's okay.
Mm. Simon, is it lonely to be at the top? You know, how lonely can it be? I mean, you talk about doubts, and I had this conversation with a number of CEOs in Davos when I attended a conference there, and they all told me that it can be very, very lonely there at the top. You know, where you're sitting on your own and you're talking about doubts and all this. How lonely is it to be at the top? And how do you manage it? How do you mitigate the loneliness?
It is and it isn't. So I think if you think it is not going to be lonely, you are going to be disappointed. It is very lonely. You are alone.
Mm.
You are alone. And those final decisions, you are alone. In the early days of our Australian business, when we still had a small investment in Australia and it was really losing money, this is 20 odd years ago, we were being pressured by the board of directors to get out of Australia. And my predecessor had bought the business there, and I thought he was right, and I thought it was definitely the thing to do. But as it does in a business, it was starting to affect our bonuses. So my executive team came to me and said, Simon, we're losing bonuses. You want to hang on to this business. We want to get out. So I said, okay, let's sit and have an honest discussion about it. And we had this big ding-dong discussion about Australia. And in the end, I said, okay, fine. Now, you've heard my view. I've heard your view. I'm going to go round the table and I'm going to just confirm what each of your views are. So I went round there were 7 in the executive team. And I said to number 1, do you think we should exit Australia? Yes. Number 2, do you think we should exit Australia? Yes. Number 3, yes. Number 4, yes. 7, yes. So I said, good. You all want to exit Australia. We are staying. And they were fuming and wouldn't talk to me for weeks. But it turned out well. I wouldn't tell the story if it didn't turn out well. But that's a lonely decision. And I said to them, I didn't take a vote. I asked your opinion. I gave you my opinion. And sometimes the chief executive has to make a decision. That is my call. I believe we can fix it. And we did, until we bought the very big one. But we had 10 wonderful years in that business. So it can be very lonely, but you have your board of directors, you have your colleagues, and your colleagues, as much as you're the boss or a peer, give you the sense of team. And it's always the team that actually does it. The leader can establish the principles and take some of those tough decisions, but it is always the team. And generally, when I look at executive teams, they enjoy working with each other. It's just that the head of the team, every now and then, has to make that cold, lonely decision. And my only advice is you've asked all the questions you need to ask. then you need to lobby and get support. And then it's not quite as lonely. Sometimes you have to do it, but being in an executive in a good team, in the end, is stimulating and fun. So yes, I call it the loneliness of the long distance runner, and I see it more in fresh chief executives. But as they settle into the role of chief executive, they get used to the pressure to make that final decision, and they get used to working with their teams.
All right. Our last question, Simon, thank you so much for these incredible insights. We've almost run out of time, inching closer to 5:30. Your grandfather, Eli Susman, he partnered with Woolies, the founder of Woolies. It's Max Sonnenberg in the 1930s. That was long ago. Yeah. What do you think he would say today when he looks at Woolies? What would he say?
He would say your till queues are too long, your service is not good enough, your quality is not good enough. So he was always a wonderful critic. I didn't know him very well. I was a young child when he passed away, but when I listened to the family stories about him, he wanted to get it right. And indeed, he came here from Russia in 1890 something and ended up settling in Zambia, what was then called Northern Rhodesia, and traded with the local people, particularly the Lozi people in Zambia, for 50 years. And they trusted him. And in fact, the king of the Lozi, the Lutunga, said to his people at one point, you stop trading with all these white guys, you can't trust them, you trade with the Susman brothers. So he would be proud that we have stuck to principles today. He would be frustrated with the little things that are wrong. And so he should be. So he should be. But he was a great adventurer. And indeed, when he did end up working for Mr. Sonnenberg, it was his second career. So he changed. He built this business up in Northern Rhodesia. And it carried on for some years after. It was eventually nationalized in the late 60s. But it was a wonderful business based on principles. So he had two careers, and I think he'd be pleased with what Woolies does today.
Yeah. Simon Susman, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. We really appreciate these pearls of wisdom. And I saw a message, somebody saying thank you for imparting all these practical leadership lessons. It's been an incredible 1.5 hours of your time, for your insights, and you have shared this generously. We really, really appreciate your presence today, and we hope to keep in touch with you. We know you're in Stellenbosch, but you
and I, we can sort out SIBA together as a team. So we can do wonderful work.
Yeah, all right. Fantastic. And I would like to thank everyone who attended and participated in this webinar. We appreciate your presence, and we look forward to interacting with you again in the future. And Simon, also please thank Wiley, your PA. She was incredible. Thank you very much for her support. And my colleagues at Wits Business School, Temne Gasachwayo, Rutendo Numalo, Alison Gayward, Jane Balneves, and Jayton Castle. Thank you very much. That's how we end our webinar today. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Mills.
Thank you. Thank you, Simon.